Karl Bartoni had a quite unusual showbiz journey, which led him to becoming Britain's most unique escapologist. It actually came about from his two hobbies, magic and horse riding. After working closely with Karl, here's a brief summary of his amazing career, with comments from Karl along the way. Karl was 7 in 1956 when he started regular visits to Murray's Magic Mart in Blackpool, run by the retired Australian escapologist Murray, who became his mentor and good friend until his death. Karl's hobby was horse riding, which he started when he was 10, and at 14 he was proficient and serious enough for his parents to buy him a horse in 1963. His mother managed to arrange for Karl to meet Bernard Crabtree, the Blackpool Tower Company entertainments manager, and as a result of this meeting, one morning Karl found himself in the Tower Circus watching an actual training session.
I sat and watched the Lippets on horses from Circus being led into the ring by grooms, along with the presenter and trainer, Sasha Hook. Sasha was appearing in 2 different horse acts that season, the first being known as a Ben-Hur act, and the second was with him and Edith Schickler demonstrating advanced dressage and high school movements. I couldn't believe it when Sasha invited me to join him and his partner Marion as they took horses down to the beach for exercising and ride along the beach with them. I was overwhelmed to say the least, and when we returned to the stables, Sasha arranged that I could go down to the stables any time I wanted. Little did I know this would be the start of a long association with the circus.
With Karl's parents separating in 1964, he opted to leave school when the term ended for summer, and so spent more time both at the circus and with his own horse. Mid-season, he was offered the job as a ring boy, alongside the lead ring boy, N. Bellew, who was known as Al. Al was at that time the regular ring boy stooge for Charlie Caroli, and they became good friends. The cage act that year was Lillian Daniels and her polar bears. When the season show ended, Karl was offered the job of looking after them at the Tower Company's winter quarters in Staining, before going with them to Kelvin Hall in Glasgow in the December.
One of my main fun chores was play fighting with the young polar bear cub that got bored as it had to be kept away from the adults. How many people get to have a polar bear as a playmate? When they left Glasgow, I returned to Blackpool and eagerly awaited the 1965 circus season.
By the time 1965 season arrived, Karl was successful in reapplying to be a ring boy. He was also asked if he'd be prepared to act as a stooge in one of the acts, Hoppy and His Unrideable Mules, where he pretended to be a member of the audience that had been invited down to try and ride one of the mules, but to be unsuccessful.
One of my planned parts in my session with the mules was for an apparently angry mule to chase me backwards across the ring and hit my chest with its teeth. Unfortunately, in one matinee show, I slipped, and instead of its teeth hitting my chest, it hit my head and blood started to pour out. I had to go to hospital and have several stitches, as well as stay off work for a few days.
The Horses and Ponies that season came from Circus Althoff, and when they arrived at North Station, one of the ponies had given birth on the trip from Germany, and Karl was given that foal to carry. The foal made an appearance at the end of each pony act with lots of ahs from the audience as he was lifted out of a large basket of flowers. At the end of the season, Karl was asked by F. Althoff and his wife if he would look after their football-playing boxer dogs, which had been another act in the show, and go up with them to Glasgow's Kelvin Hall Circus for the Christmas season, where he also ended up riding a horse in the show's finale. Karl returned to the Tower as a ring boy in 1966, the year Norman Barrett had taken over as ringmaster, helping with the horses but also devoting more time to his magic in his rest periods. Murray had started to encourage him to develop a magic act, as well as reminiscing about his various exploits as an escapologist on each meeting with him.
During one show, I was the only ring boy stood in the ring entrance watching Charlie Caroli's slosh entree, which was involving lots of water, when suddenly he drenched me with the hosepipe. This unexpected ad-lib got a big laugh from the audience, and so I stood there most evening performances to get a soaking.
The 1967 season didn't require Karl's involvement with the animal acts, but he still had a walk-on part in the Caroli acts and more time to spend with his magic. Karl's good friend Al hadn't returned as ring boy for the 1968 season, and Charlie asked Karl to take over and play the ring boy part in his slosh entree, the act before the water finale. This meant a thorough soaking at every performance, and it was the start of a long collaboration as Charlie's ring boy stooge. Karl also made friends with the Svensons, a comedy pas de deux act on 2 horses, and he and Charlie Svensson would ride on the beach on the horses most mornings. Towards the end of the season, Karl finally completed his own magic act, which was a silent prop act. The theme was that of an old-time music hall act. Tommy Jones, the Circus's musical director, made up the band parts for the act, and Bernard Crabtree allowed one of the Circusettes to wear one of her show costumes to assist and do a photo shoot. By 1969, Karl was featuring more in Charlie's act. During Charlie's musical entree, he was called into the ring dressed as an Arab to assist in some magic with a goldfish bowl. The bowl with water and fish, ending up inside his trousers. The 1970 season became quite a turning point in Karl's life for many reasons, and really started in the Steyning winter quarters, when the Svenssons returned early that April for the season with 2 new horse acts. The first, a double pas de deux, that's 4 people standing on 2 horses, where the intro to the act consisted of 4 performers in a sleigh going round the ring, followed by 2 Cossack-style horseback riders. The 2 riders would then do simple riding manoeuvres whilst the sleigh was removed, and Karl was to become one of those riders. The second act Karl was involved in was a comedy knockabout, which involved 4 men, 4 pairs of really baggy trousers laid out in a row, and 3 horses racing around the ring. The game was for the 4 men to rush, put on the trousers and try to leap on a horse, and whoever got on a horse would stay in the game, whilst 1 horse and 1 rider were eliminated each round. The whole act looked like chaotic mayhem, but it was all really carefully choreographed, with Karl being the last contestant up against Charlie Svensson, who had come out of the audience with his wife Greta, making sure that Karl never won.
It was quite chaotic being a part of so many acts, especially when it came to costumes. During each show I would be in makeup and costume for the opening act, which was the Svenssons, make a quick change back to ring boy for the next 3 acts, then another quick change into a costume for Caroli's first act, and then another quick change for the Svenssons' second act, the Charlies. I was then back to ring boy for most of the rest of the show, but finally being drenched as I took part in Caroli's very watery act.
Any free time Karl had was spent trying to fine-tune his magic act. Murray suggested he would get some good publicity for both his stage name and for the act if he would do a publicity stunt.
He suggested that I do an escape from bonds while sealed in a packing crate underwater, and was not in the least bit concerned when I told him I couldn't swim. He maintained that it was all just a matter of breath control and not panicking. He convinced me to do the stunt, and the wheels were set in motion. I was granted permission to use the Stanley Park Lake for the stunt, and I had 12 willing assistants, the other ring boys. I enjoyed the performance so much that I decided to play down the magic act and concentrate on escapology.
The 1971 season didn't require Karl's involvement with the animal acts, although he did have a much bigger part to play in Charlie Caroli's acts.
I spent less free time on the magic act and more about escapes, especially ones that would involve me hanging upside down. On some days between the shows, I had my willing assistants haul me up by a rope to the circus ceiling to practice an escape from 100 feet of rope and sash cord, which I had planned to do whilst hanging from the top of the Clifton Hotel stairwell.
At the end of the season, Karl was offered work at the Opera House as the head of stage electrics. He agreed to this, and his life was to take a new direction, which promised more exciting times on the horizon.
Those early years with the circus had given me confidence and a taste for performing. Soon that second hobby of mine started to come to the fore, as you will see in part 2 of my story.